your story, Mark.
Welcome back to Framewreck. Happy New Year, everyone. Dylan Randazzo and Matt Chapmond here to bring you more So Bad It's Good movie talk as we do every month here on Framewreck. A cold open was as cold as it's ever been. A silent open, we love to see it. But how do you make an open fitting enough for the DC movies classic Catwoman, Matt?
You don't. That's you put about as much thought and care into it as Warner Brothers put into this movie.
There you go. So yes, we are talking about Catwoman from 2004, I believe. The
Yes.
Halle Berry film, her big blank check after her Oscar win a few years before. We're gonna get into all of it. We're gonna talk about the comic book connection, which there isn't. So that'll be fun. And then we'll talk about the story and some of the elements that make it bad, of course, or make it great because it's bad, of course. And then we'll get into some superlatives and then ultimately do some little last minute awards and get out of here and tease next month. Matt, where do you want to begin with Catwoman? Where do you want to begin?
First let's talk about who made it, which was written by just a bunch of people. John Rogers, John Brancato, and Michael Ferris from a story by Teresa Reback, Brancato, and Ferris, who's the Monoman. Oh God, he has one name, Petoff. Oh God, he has a mononym, which makes him mononymous. There we go.
Mononymous. There you go. Okay, you got there. It's okay. It's January, guys. This is the new year. This is our first show of the new year. We're easing in. It's been a busy week with a lot of other stuff going on. Oscar nominations just came out. There's in the middle of Sundance. We're approaching the big 24-hour subathon. Our heads are a little bit busy, a little bit cluttered. Like a cat with a ball of yarn. We can only focus on so much. When we make these
that's
notes.
true, and that's really the basis. I said it last time. It's like that's the basis for this one. Like we're gonna curl up like some cats for this one. This is our rest before the and we'll reveal it at the end here. The massive one we're gonna do in February.
And I think it's interesting when you bring up the writers, just because it's like I kind of teased it earlier. It's funny how little this has to do with any other Batman stuff or any other Catwoman stuff I've seen. You're much more of like a DC Comics aficionado than I am, so you can probably speak on it a little bit more. But also,
I do, yeah. I love DC. Like I'm a Batman guy, but really DC in general is my comic book. Like I prefer DC to Marvel in terms of comic books. Their movies haven't been quite with the thing about DC is that Marvel has a pretty fairly standard quality wise. I mean it's just quality wise they're pretty well, like most of their movies range from good to great. Like, and there are a few. There's you got your Morbiuses and stuff like that.
Your Morbi.
But for the most part, Marvel is pretty consistent in quality. DC unfortunately has not met that standard because while it does have some of the greatest comic book movies ever made.
The Nolan trilogy.
The Nolan trilogy. The
Reeves
the
movie
Batman. It's just a bunch of like the bat. Then you've also got just the bottom of the barrel. And honestly, Catwoman isn't even the bottom of the barrel, but it's there. It's right. It's with the bottom of the barrel.
Just by the nature of who the lead star is, we just talked about it. She came off an Oscar win, and just the time it came out. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit better in production quality than like Superman 4 or something like that. So, like, I get where some people might come from when they say it's not the bottom of the barrel, but I think. I think because it is more modern than some of those other films, there's also a lot more glaring issues that have to do with the technology and how it was made, and especially how it was edited, and also how it was directed, because we're in a time still where, the male gaze is quite a thing to talk about, especially in this film. So there's a lot of issues, I think, that are some things that are better than had this been made in the 90s, but some of it almost feels worse because it wasn't made a little earlier. It has
Right.
this it really feels like a mid 2000s Marvel or DC like superhero movie that was not a
Right.
hit. Like not your Spider-Mans, not your X-Men's, not your Batmans, like you were saying. Like this is kind of close to the bottom of the barrel, I'd say.
Right. Well, that's true. But for comparison, I'm pretty sure this same year, uh Punisher with Thomas Jane came out, which was
Mm,
awesome.
yeah.
So anyway, um this originally was going to be a spin-off of Batman Returns starring Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh,
Was going to direct it.
whoa. Okay.
And it was in developmental hell for years. Eventually Michelle Pfeiffer was like, look, I'm going to spend time with my family, which she did. She took time off up until Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like she'd taken a lot of
Wow.
time off from acting. She spent time with her family. So they in 2001 they switched to they recast it as Ashley Judd in the role. But then she ended up leaving, and then in 2004, the year this came out, in 2004, WB scrapped a Batman versus Superman movie that was supposed to come out that year, and was like, "What are we gonna do? Quick, let's make Catwoman." And they made it and put it out that same year. Uh,
Wow. So how many months would you say they had from like the day they put the pen to paper or put the mouse to the keyboard, whatever, to when this was in theaters? Like probably less than at least 12, 11 months, right?
oh, I mean, it was the same. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what I don't. I sure I have
Right.
that
I
information
mean, just like an
somewhere, but
estimation though, to give people an idea, like it's less than a year, maybe only like half a year, right?
oh
Like
yeah, I
that's the
would
window
say
we're looking.
I would say from start to finish, this is probably a 6 to 9 month process
Wow.
that
So
they
it,
went
it
to.
it takes longer to birth a child than it does to make this movie. And some movies come together quickly, they do, but this movie, it's very evident that it came together quickly. And I
Oh
just,
yeah,
as someone who's not a comic book person, I still noticed like the absence of a real comic book nature to it. Like, yeah, she's got reflexes that are like powers, but if you hadn't told me this was Catwoman and this was just some like a monster movie or something about this woman who like got this weird possession or whatever, like
right.
it can exist completely outside of the DC. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing for every movie. Some movies can exist outside of it, but the fact that Gotham isn't even name dropped, the fact that there's no other characters or any references to anything that is comic book related, like it's nice to stand alone, but there's almost so much standalone that it feels like just kind of a really sub average drama with a like kind of sexy thriller kind of crime movie with like, oh yeah, she also has cat like reflexes. Like it doesn't feel like a superhero movie, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and what's funny is that like because of the path it took, this became a movie that was based on the Catwoman from Batman Returns, but not connected to it. Therefore, not making it connected to Catwoman of any other iteration. Because here's the thing: in the comics and in every other version of Catwoman, she doesn't have powers. She's not the the female version of the Crow. Like that's not
Uh,
her situation. That's it in Batman Returns, which makes sense why they did that. It's a Burton movie. You got to make it like dark and mysterious and weird and a little supernatural. So I get it. But in the comics, she's just a cat burglar.
oh,
She just happens to be she just happens to be nimble and like so that so the fact that it went from a version of Burton's Catwoman through so much hell into this version makes it not Catwoman and not the version, not a spinoff in any way.
right.
So it's very,
It's its own standalone, but yeah,
yeah,
it's if it
it's
was good,
very,
I'd say like because look at Joker. Joker, I don't like Joker, but it got nominated for so many Oscars. It won some
yeah,
Oscars for score and actor. Like it was a hit, and it is not connected to anything else because it knows exactly what its identity is. It's not trying to be connected, but it at least has a flavor of something that you can grasp onto if you're into all that other stuff.
Mhm.
Whereas here, that's missing. And I know we're going to get into why it's so bad it's good, but I think that's like the glaring obvious why it's just flat out bad and why this is not a good movie. I think. I
Right.
mean, I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's
not.
an entertaining one, and we'll get into like the so bad it's good stuff, obviously. But yeah, I think that kind of stuff is what holds it back. The rush production. We'll talk about the editing because that's like my biggest thing, and then just like the connectivity to the product and the origin and the product placement and just all the brand IP stuff is all over the place.
Oh yeah. It's funny you mentioned Joker because this movie does have a connection to Joker in that one of the cast members is in this and in Joker, which is Frances
Yes.
McCrory, or not McCrory, Frances Conroy, who plays his mom in
Arthur's mother.
Joker and plays the weird cat lady in.
I mean, that's her brand. It seems like she's just the weird cat lady everywhere. I mean, American Horror Story she's been in. She's been in like she's been the creepy person in a lot of things. So it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So okay. So on to let's talk about what makes this movie great, and let's start with editing because that's the thing that you really hit on, and I completely agree. So about your experience with the editing of this movie.
So there are films with like good editing, obviously. There's stuff with bad editing, like just shots don't really line up, or it's just poorly thought out editing. And then there's just like movies like this where it just like feels like the most editing. And like, yes, it's bad editing, but it's also so chaotic that I couldn't take my eyes away from it. And the whole time I was like leaning in, trying to study this thing. It's almost like the opposite of Citizen Kane, where like that movie you're leaning in because you're like, wow, look at all those shots. Like, how did they do that? Now I'm leaning in. How did they do that? But it's for a whole nother beast. It's the total opposite. It's because they're so glaringly chaotic and bad. But I'm leaning in, like it's not like a movie where I'm like, oh, this editing is kind of bad. Like I'm leaning in. Like Bohemian Rhapsody is a movie where the editing annoys me because it's like they're just having a conversation and the camera's cutting all over the place. They don't need it. But here I'm like leaning in because I'm fascinated because it kind of intrigues me and I enjoy it because it's so bad. Like it's a very odd movie in that way. Like it cuts all over the place. There are moments like that where they're having a conversation and there'll be just extreme close up, then back up, and close up, like just all over the place. But then even in the action, like you'll have prolonged shots and then like snip, 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 snip. It's just so chaotic. You know what I mean?
It is. Well, and like you said, like it's not a lean in where you're like how, but it is a lean in like why. Like my wife didn't she was off doing something and so she wasn't able to watch this with me when I rewatched it yet last night and then again today, but that's just my thing. But she did get to watch like the last 10 minutes, like the last fight scene with me, and she came in, she sat down, she goes, I can't watch this. This is going to make me sick because it was just like bam, 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 bam. And the crazy thing about it cuts a lot. Like, and that's very noticeable. And it's obvious they're trying to, I don't know because the Pitoff is a visual effects supervisor who he was before he retired and then directed a few movies. Like, so I'm not sure if this was an intentional thing or if he didn't shoot very well and only shot snippets of it and they were like, this is the best we can do. If they were just covering up a lot of mistakes, because the thing that I noticed was that not only is it cut a lot and not only is the editing bad, but it repeats beats through the editing, but not like next to each other. Like it'll repeat a beat a few beats after that beat had happened before, and it's cut to several other things. It's so weird. Like when she's doing the basketball thing, like she does the thing like 3 times or something. Like
it's like in a
so
documentary when like you're using archival footage and you need to fill a 2-hour documentary and you have a lot of story, but because you can't go film anything new because they're either dead or they, the subject, you're not able to get that footage. They recycle the same clips and photos over again. That's what it feels like. It feels like, oh, we're rushed for time. We need to pad this thing to 2 hours or an hour and a half or whatever, however long it is. Let's just recycle this, or like, let's just do this, but show it from a different angle. And that becomes like your wife said, very exhausting and frustrating and headache inducing. It just, as a film fan, I was still leaning in because I'm like, wow, like it's almost like you can't believe it. Like, and also
Right.
given how the time crunch, you would think that there'd be less editing because they don't have time. But it seems like they put so much time in the editing or they overthought it. Whereas I think with less time, I was expecting it to be more just like leave the camera here, roll the scene, let's go. But instead now it's like it almost seems like you had so much time because you're getting every single angle under the sun in every second. Like it's like
Right.
20, it's not 24 frames per second, it's like 24 shots per second. It's so weird.
I
And
wonder if they
color.
didn't shoot one take for each angle of coverage and then just cut those 4 takes together.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that would make sense if they're on a time crunch. They're like, we don't have time to shoot coverage, or we don't have time to shoot multiple takes. We own it, but if we want coverage, so we can shoot 1 take per angle. And then they just were like, here it is,
Mhm.
and then just kind of tossed it in a blender.
Yeah.
And this is what we get. It's funny because this is not really about the editing, but it does. Your critique there reminds me of an exact critique that I have about the opening credits of this movie, which are
Yes.
unbelievably long.
Yeah,
Um,
long and don't really fit the vibe of the movie. Again, you're watching this and you're like, is this a DC movie or is this some weird like mummy spinoff? And there's a little bit in it with the weird cat lady of like this mythological stuff, but they really don't dive in. Not
right.
really.
Not very much. It's funny. It's because here's what I have written. Opening credits are so long. It felt like a presentation that you put off until the last day. So you just throw all the top images from your Google search onto your slideshow.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. It's like okay, yeah, this is all about cats, but it doesn't really fit the movie, and especially because I've seen it 3 times. I watched it back in 2004. Watched it last night, and then I watched it today just because I like to watch them a second time before we record.
Mhm.
And the second time watching it today, or when I was watching it today, I was like, "Wow, because I was like, wow, this is really long." I don't know why it just everything is about cats. It's pretty on the nose. The second time watching it through, I was like, but I thought something would connect, and yeah, it does. Like you see some of these images when she's talking to Cat Lady later, but it's like it doesn't it not only is that a repeated beat, which we know we get in this movie a lot, but it's like it doesn't seem to like it doesn't it's like this is in your presentation, but you're not really talking about this in your presentation. You just needed something to fill the slideshow, and that's how it felt.
Yeah, it's padding. And one
Yeah.
last thing on the editing. I do think, even though the editing is all over the place, there's one shot that I loved in this movie. And it was so funny because sometimes in a bad movie, you'll see like one shot. It's kind of like what we talked about with Shockmo, with that like great shot of the blood dripping from him
Yeah.
from the POV. Like shots like that where they just pop up out of nowhere and you're like, oh wow, that's really cool. It's like kind of one of those time lapse things like you see in nature documentaries sometimes when they're showing like night to day and they leave the camera on, they fast forward everything. But in this shot, it's like the whole office building is moving about their day fast forwarding, but she's in real time at her office. And it's to show that she's like, I'm about to get off of work soon. And then you see, oh, she doesn't get off work soon. She's a busy person and she's the last one to leave the office. And that transition where you see everyone moving really, really fast behind her and you see night turn into day and she's still at her office, she's moving in real time. That to me was so cool. I was like, why isn't the whole movie like this? That one shot really blew me away. And I was like, okay, maybe this is not as bad as I thought. And then it goes off the rails even more. That was before the basketball scene. But I really do think that shot is so good. It's where I was like almost convinced for a millisecond that this was maybe better or more competent than I thought it would be, because shots like that can do it. And I really like that shot. I like the idea of who this character is and you know, as a worker, but then it kind of goes off the rails once she actually becomes Catwoman. And that's where you get a lot more of the comedy. And that's where we could probably segue to like the catness of it, which
Right.
I think is the shining star of the badness. So bad it's goodness is all the cat stuff.
I have to say I do love that scene you mentioned. I love it as I actually have a fondness for those type of scenes like in movies. Partially just because I think they very simply convey a lot. They tell a lot of story with a very simple very simple suggestion. But also the amount of time it takes to make a scene like that, which is funny because we talk about a time crunch, that they did a scene like this because
Right.
you remember the movie Garden State. There's that scene where Large is on the
I do.
couch and at the party, and everybody's like, "Was that at your house? Was
Mhm.
that the one that was at your house?"
That was the one that was filmed in my childhood home. Yep. So
Yeah,
yes, I've said it on this show probably before, but yes, for those listening that don't know, Garden State was filmed in my house. One of the scenes, or a few of the scenes, were filmed in my house, not the whole film, but we basically had to move to a hotel for a month, and Zach Braff and the production designers basically redesigned my house for that movie, and then filmed some of the movie in my house. So I got to meet Zach Braff, Peter Skarsgård.
Sarsgaard,
Sarsgaard. Yes, I get them confused
Sarsgaard.
because all the big family Sarsgaard. No, the big family Skarsgård. He's Sarsgaard. He's the one who's married to Maggie Gyllenhaal. Got it. Him, Jim Parsons, that crew. The only one I didn't meet was Natalie. All of Natalie's scenes are
Oh,
elsewhere.
that
But
sucks.
but that was a cool memory, and it was probably one of my first memories because I was like 4 when it happened, so like very fresh, or 5 or something.
Right.
So
Well, there's that scene in Garden State where Large is sitting on that couch, and then everybody's like having the party around him because he had just taken some drugs, and like everybody's having the party around him, and it's all going to fast forward around him, and he's just sitting there. Well, I was obsessed with that movie for a while because I saw that at a very formidable time in my very early,
right.
my early, not childhood, my early adulthood, and so when I saw that, it had a profound effect on me, which I know it gets a lot of crap these days, but back then we all liked it. Don't Didn't all like that movie back
Oh
then? We
yeah.
did.
I mean,
Um,
New Sign, New the Shins, amazing soundtrack.
yeah. Um, so I was watching the commentary on that, and he was saying that he had to sit on that couch for like 12 hours while people just did stuff behind him because they're all doing stuff at regular
It's
speed, and
probably
then they
my
speed it up.
couch too. That's what's so funny.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but those
So
shots, they take time. It's
yeah,
time inducing, which is why it's so perplexing that that's the stuff they spend a lot of time on. When I think you
right.
can make something that's more conventional in presentation if you spend more time on the script, which they should have done.
Yeah.
But let's get into some of the maybe the writing and the story and
Oh
the
yes,
cat
the writing.
mannerisms, like I said, because once she becomes Catwoman, because everything before that's kind of mundane. There's some bad dialogue, and my worst dialogue is from that first chunk. But like once she becomes Catwoman, it just goes to another extreme. And
It
that's
does.
when we see most of the poor male gaze stuff, which we'll talk about in the bad, but also some of the great stuff, which is the cat mannerisms, her eating the catnip, her, purring and all the cat-like things, her being afraid of the rain, all that stuff cracked me up. Because it feels like something you would see like out of SNL. You would see like this kind of joke thing where this person becomes a cat, but it's real, and they're playing it off so dramatically. And like you like to say in the show, the best bad movies are the ones where they think they're making a good movie, and
Yeah.
they thought there was something profound there. They were
Oh
not
yeah.
going for laughs, and that's what makes it so fucking funny.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because those parts, like the catnip, and there were certain few parts. See, here's the thing. A lot of the time when I'm watching these, I'm watching them alone. My wife doesn't really dig them, although sometimes she does like to make fun of movies, so sometimes she'll sit in with me, but it's generally just me. And so, although I find these movies funny, I'm generally not like laughing out loud because you don't really do that a lot when you're by yourself. But there were a few times during this movie, the catnip one was one where I was like, what the fuck? And I laughed out loud, and I was like, what is happening here?
Right.
Because it's been almost 20 years since I've seen this movie, so it was
Jeez. Wow.
yeah.
Way to age us both. Because I'm young, but even I remember when that was in theaters. I didn't see it, but I remember being like, "Oh, that movie's on, and she's pretty." I
Yeah.
thought she was pretty, but then when you watch this movie, you realize the director probably thought a lot more things about Halle
Oh yeah,
Berry and
for sure.
disrespected her. I keep planting
Okay.
that seed. We'll get to it later, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about writing. Let's start with. I'd like to start with just uh, the the first very blatant error in their writing process here, which was when they named this character. They named her
Okay.
Patience Phillips, and they named her that because they were like, "Hey, you know what's a common comic? This is a common comic book trope is alliteration in their names. It is a common thing. It does happen a lot, but you'll definitely find more characters not named with alliterative, not that don't have alliterative names than that do.
Wait,
But there are a lot, so it is a comic book thing.
but
It's a bigger thing in Marvel than it is in DC, but it does happen in both.
isn't Patience? Doesn't Phillips make an F sound though? So wouldn't
Yes,
it
it
be
does. Yeah,
wouldn't it be funny if
that's
it
what
was
I'm.
like, oh, okay, okay. I get what you
That's
mean
what
now.
I'm saying here is
Okay.
that
On
they
paper,
said
it looks
is
like
that they wrote the
TP,
name and they're like alliteration. There it is, two P's. Apparently, no one spoke it out loud because
but
they
it's really a
alliteration is the
sound. Yeah,
sounds, not the letters. So it's
that is actually really really funny. Wow, they could have named her anything with an F, like Flora, or I was going to start listing off the fairies from Sleep Beauty, Flora, Fauna. But yeah, anything with an F, or change her last name to something else. I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but I kind of love Patience Phillips because she is such a patient person early on. She's
Mhm.
very, she's very good at her job, but she's also busy. And Busy Phillips is a person, and I wasn't sure if they were like, oh, she's really busy, like Busy Phillips, but she's also patient. Let's call her Patient Phillips. I don't know. That was my
I
reasoning of
would not
wouldn't
put
that be
that
funny?
past them.
I don't know
Uh,
because I don't know much about Busy Phillips, but I just always loved the name. I'm like, there she is. She good and busy, Busy Phillips. She's always hardworking. And she's very hardworking in this film too. Patience Phillips. I almost called her Busy Phillips, but yeah, I don't know. Just an observation. Benjamin Bratt, and also a great alliteration. Not a great
yeah,
actor in this, but
yeah. Benjamin Bratt is good alliteration. That's not his name though. In this
oh,
movie, so they didn't.
oh
They
no, it's
still
not.
didn't get
You're right.
good alliteration in this
I was gonna
movie.
say Sharon
Uh,
Stone. Nope. Okay, those aren't their real names. Yeah, Tom Lone is not an alliteration. Ophelia Powers is a little bit better, but even then,
yeah.
Ophelia, like Ophelia Powers, like I feel like they're making fun, they're having fun with the names. Like I feel your powers, Ophelia Power. I don't know.
Uh,
I don't know.
Leah Phillips would have been closer to alliteration. Um, but
Yeah,
okay.
Ophelia Phillips.
Yeah.
Oh man, this movie.
uh, so that was the first issue with just from the beginning. It's like, oh god. And what I love about that character that they made her like the most late 90s early 2000s artsy girl that they possibly could.
Right.
Like she wears the baggy clothing and she uh acts like she's not pretty because
Mhm.
she's an art girl. uh
When we know, and we don't even have to know based on other things, that she is one of the most beautiful women on the face of the planet, Halle Berry. So
right,
which makes it even more funny
right.
because that's such a trope of like, oh come on, you know.
They didn't put glasses on her, which is commonly what they do. They did that to Michelle Pfeiffer in the first one. So like
Hmm.
at least they don't do that one, but just a lot of tropes to
My
of the
question for you
artsy
though,
girl.
why not Selena Kyle? Why didn't they just name her that? Is it a rights
Uh,
thing? Do you think, or
I honestly don't know. I mean, it was WB, so that they could.
yeah, or do
Um,
they just want to be as annoying to the fans as possible by not
I'm sure
mentioning
that's
Gotham or Selena Kyle or anything about DC? And again, it doesn't have to be about the IP, but there's nothing. You know, this could exist in any universe.
I think the reason is possibly because they want to. I mean, I think there's a few reasons. I think number one, I think if it had been, and this is probably the is probably just indicative of where we were in 2004. But if it had been Ashley Judd, she would have been Selena Kyle. The fact that it was a black woman meant
Ah,
that they had to name her something else. I would be
I
willing to
see.
bet.
Okay,
Um,
bad.
uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's probably it. But also, like they, I think the idea also is like they were trying to create a franchise of Catwomen, like because not only leaving open the idea that Michelle Pfeiffer could come back at some point
So
and
they
start
wanted her
doing
to
it
be the only Selena Kyle in the
because
universe.
when Cat Lady is showing her she has a name but I don't care when Cat Lady is showing her like all the pictures and all of the evidence her presentation of Catwomen uh Michelle Pfeiffer as Selena Kyle is one of the pictures
Oh, I didn't even
so
realize.
it does
Ah,
officially take place in that same universe so I think the idea
gotcha.
is like they're just like this is going to be a huge success. We're going to have a franchise of Catwomen,
Hmm.
and this is that's also part of it. But 100, I would be willing to bet my paycheck that it had been Ashley Judd, she would have been Selena Kyle.
Okay, interesting. Was Ashley Judd up for it, or that was just an example?
No, in a couple years earlier, when they had when it was still in developmental hell, Ashley Judd was cast, and then she left.
Right. Okay, gotcha. I forgot about that. Yep, cool. All right, cool.
So yeah, that's where we start with the bad. There's and this is pretty early in the movie, but it kind of goes throughout the movie. One thing that I don't really understand, I've seen it 3 times and I still don't really see what exactly they were going for with it, was why the movie spends so much time pretending Sharon Stone isn't the bad guy when we see her in the scene where Patience Phillips gets killed, and she's the one who says to kill her. Like, she's the one who's sharing the instruction to get her.
Yeah,
like,
and just the way it's designed too. She looks like a bad guy in this. Like the way they dress her, the way her hair is styled. Like she gives off like that bad vibe.
She does. But then like after that moment, they spend almost until the end of the movie pretending like she's not, like we didn't see that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and then there's that weird fake out where she's like all of a sudden with Selena, and she's like, "No, we're gonna kill George," and then she's like, "Just kidding, I'm gonna hand you the gun." Mwahaha. And it's just like you could have just skipped that step and gone. I don't know. It's a lot of like misdirects for the sake of it, and I think it's a lot of padding time still. It's like, all right, well, we don't want to go too far into the exposition, but also like we need more, and we've already baked this love story as much as we can. The love story, I think, is probably the most passable element of this, because like it's your traditional comic book thing. It's like he's in love with her, but her alter ego is what he has to fight. Like it's a good conflict. It's a classic conflict we see in superhero movies. Is some of the execution of some of the scenes, aka the basketball scene, aka the wheel, what's it called? I almost said Wheel of Fortune. The Ferris wheel scene. Like those scenes, are they well executed? Maybe not, but like I think the actual relationship is probably the most sane part of it. The most like I can get on board with that aspect of the story.
Yeah, I would love to have understood what was happening with the Ferris wheel at any point. I still don't understand what he was doing to the Ferris wheel or what caused that. I know the gears were being weird, but I don't know. Like, I don't understand why that was making people fall, or like why it was.
I
really.
don't know.
I have to imagine that would just make it stop or start like spinning. But
I think it's more for the sake of, we need another cool set piece. Let's make this.
Yeah.
But like, if you're gonna make this set piece, have it take place in like Coney Island and make it a giant ass Ferris wheel. Don't make it this little thing where if the kid falls, he's probably gonna break his leg. But at that height, probably not gonna get that hurt unless he like hits his head. I mean, obviously, I don't want to, God forbid anything happen. But like, it's not the most death-defying thing. It's not like they're going. It's not like a Six Flags Great Adventure. That this little carnival. I fell off a ride when I was a kid at a carnival.
Oh, real?
It was a little kiddie ride, but yeah.
Yeah, that scene failed on multiple levels because, first of all, it's just the conceit of it is very weird, but number two, the fact that if you're going to make this like a big moment for her where she has to save a person and make it, and it needs to be like it's an impressive moment for her. Number one, don't have someone without superpower climb down the thing first, right in front of her. Number two, when you have that scene where she has to quickly get to the kid, maybe show her doing it instead of doing it in a weird first person VR situation.
Again, the editing is just so perplexing. And also I think like at that moment, make that the moment where he realizes it's her. You don't have to do the whole we're gonna sleep together and then I'm gonna see the nails and like then I'm gonna figure it out and then I'm gonna take her to the carnival and test it. No, we're fine. Like it's like because the carnival happens after they sleep together, correct? Or is the carnival right before? So it's like I can't remember exactly, but it's like one of those things where like there could have been a quicker jump. Like make that moment where he's like, "Oh shit, she's Catwoman." Like you don't have to pad it. And I get they want to have a steamy sex scene, and that could segue us into the problematic stuff in this movie, which is the male gaze and just all the sex stuff in this movie. There's definitely a time and place to make things sultric and make things sexy, because Catwoman's a sexy character. All the Catwomen have been sexy, but there's a way to frame it with respect to where it doesn't come across as just this but this male guy looking at someone and being like, oh wow, like I'm so, like, look at her tits. And it's like there's like a whole shot where like it's overhead of Sharon Stone and you can see fully down her shirt, and I'm like, why is this the composition that we're watching it as like a 5, 6, 7-year-old boy? I've been like, but like as an adult I'm like, that's disrespectful, and that's that's kind of shitty. Like there are places where if you want to see boobs you can go to, and even there are some movies where our boobs are classily shown, like Titanic. Like it doesn't all have to be this like zoom in on the abs and the leather, and it just becomes a little disrespectful. I don't know if that's the common consensus, but watching this I felt very kind of like, yeah, I could tell this was made by a man kind of thing.
Oh yeah, a lot of it was super icky. Even down to and again, we all know the editing is bad. There's a really cool cut in this, which is not really, it isn't indicative of good editing as much as it was just a well conceived shot, which is right after she first uses the whip, like after she gets done, and then she does the thing and whips, and as soon as it cracks at the camera, it cuts to the next scene. Like that's a great cut.
I like that. Yeah.
They recreate a similar situation to that in the very end, right before it cuts to credits. And there's the moment where she's doing the thing, she's walking away. She's I don't know, she must be completely CGI because she's moving in a very weird way. But it like her hips are like shaking, like it's obviously designed to be like sexual. But it's very weird and kind of off-putting when you watch it because it doesn't feel real. But she does the whole whip thing, crack, and that would have been a great moment to go to credits. But then you get like 3 extra seconds of her walking away, and I think it's completely obvious that I would even bet that's a studio note where they're like, maybe we should just leave that 3 seconds and give them all their money's worth, let the boys have it, that's how it feels.
The visual effects is great to bring up because Pitoff, he is a visual effects guy, and the visual effects here aren't good. And it's not like early 2000s, like, oh, it's just underdeveloped, the technology wasn't there. Like, it just looks very blatantly bad when it didn't have to be. Like, the cats themselves look creepy. I'm sorry, I love cats. I didn't used to, but I do now. And I love cats. But the cats in this look creepy. The CGI cats. They look fake enough to where it's like a little unsettling, a little uncanny valley. And like you said, the stuff of her walking away to try to probably make her look a little bit more sensual doing it. Like, if the actor didn't do it, don't artificially make the actor do it. Like, that's not the actor anymore then. Like, it's why have an actor? It's just so dumb to me, some of the changes, like, and the visual effects, like, that don't need to be there either. Like, you could probably just get a real cat and like you like have the little cat looking in the water. You can train a cat to do that, a movie cat. You can, and I think the one cat that she rescues, I think that is a real cat, and that shows, and that looks good. Or the one that she's about to rescue on the windowsill. It's the other cats, like the ones in the dream, the one that looks in the lake and pulls her out. Like that's the creepy cat, and I don't like
that. Well, and even now as I'm about to say this, I realized that example of Marvel movie in 2004 was Punisher with Tom Jane, but Spider-Man 2 also came out in 2004.
Right, and the visual effects there look awesome.
And the whole thing that I was going to mention was that I don't understand why they couldn't get a good scene of her crawling along the walls. When Spider-Man came out 2 years before that, Spider-Man 2 came out that same year, and they look incredible when he's crawling on walls. Like, it looks completely real. But every time she had to like jump at a wall and crawl on the wall at all, it was obvious. Like, it was obvious that it went to a computer animated version of her, and she moved so weird. Like, it wasn't even cat like. It was like crab like. It was so weird. It was very off putting.
But cycling this back to the thesis of our show, I think that's what makes it so entertaining.
Oh yeah,
I really do think that all these mishaps have me leaning in so more. Like in my review, I said I was never bored, and I think that's kind of the best compliment I can give it is that like I was never bored by it. I was a little
Mhm.
like pissed off at the way some of the male gaze with the portraying of the women. A lot of the editing was clumsy, but the whole as a whole, this film had me intrigued, had me laughing. I mean, all the cat like mannerisms. The action is fine. Like the action, I think, is where I lose the most interest because I'm just like, it's just fine action. It's not
Yeah.
terrible action when she's not jumping around. Like when they're actually just in hand-to-hand combat, it's fine. But it really is the dialogue, which we'll get to when we get to our worst lines of dialogue, stuff like that,
Uh,
and just the overall nature of the story itself that do make me laugh, and I do recommend a nice, fun hate watch for
oh
this.
yeah. Oh yeah. And you're right. The fight scenes were not terrible because like when it was hand to hand. The problem with a lot of it was that anytime she had to do any stunts, it went CGI. Well,
Right.
most of the time, you can tell that they were and this is why it's weird, is that you could tell they were fine with wires because anytime she had to like land in the weird cat pose every single goddamn time, she it was obvious she was on wires and they placed her there.
Right.
Why couldn't they do that on the walls and stuff like
Right.
that? Like you have
Yeah.
wires there, you have
Yeah, or
harnesses.
just build walls on the floors and tilt the
Yeah,
camera. Like, you
that's
don't even have
true.
to
Like,
do green screen and stuff like that and wires. You can just have the camera, and that's why movies are so special and different from theater, is like you can literally make the angles different with the camera. It's like how
yeah,
Inception, they weren't actually, I mean, some of it was rotating, but like the camera has a lot to do with the Inception fights. Like it's not all wires. It's not all, like the camera does a lot of the work for you.
oh yeah, yeah. It's just it's so wild. Um, okay, well, let's talk about the acting in this movie.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, Sharon Stone, and I guess I'm just going to give this away here.
Yeah.
Um, most of it is due to dialogue,
Yeah.
and but she did not do the bad dialogue any favors.
No.
She's my to say she's my worst actor in this movie.
Okay.
She was so over the top at every turn in this movie. Like every time she had to say anything, including it's at the very like when she's first introduced and she stands up and makes a big scene in the thing. She hams it up so much of that scene. Anytime she has to show any emotion, it honestly the best acting she did in this movie was when she had to pretend to cry. That was the only time that felt real because she was supposed to be poor acting in that scene.
Mm. Yeah, no, I don't blame you. That's a great pick. Yeah, she's not good in this movie. I haven't seen her in many movies. I kind of like was a little late to like the big wave of when Sharon Stone was like popular and in a lot of stuff. That being said, I still think because the villain is a little hammy, I was a little bit more forgiving of it. I don't think she's
Mm,
good, but I picked someone who is also hammy, but is in a role that requires a lot less hamminess. And I love her to death. I love Marvelous Miss
mm.
Maisel. I love Family Guy, but it's Alex Borstein. I think her stuff in
Yeah.
The Office is so cringy. Just everything's out, just all over the place. It's like she's playing it for an SNL sketch. And I wish if the whole movie, if all the actors were on that page, it would have been fine. But I think because her and, like you said, Sharon Stone are hamming it up so much, and someone like Halle Berry or Benjamin Bratt, while the dialogue is shit and it's hard to make it good, they at least feel like they're giving real, honest performances, or at least trying with what they're given. Whereas Alex Borstein, maybe it's because she already was ahead of the curve and knew this was a shit show, and she was just kind of making it as silly and goofy and terrible as possible. But spoiler alert, my worst line of dialogue, I believe, is hers, so I'll save it. But it's really bad.
Um, yeah, I agree with you. It was actually between Sharon Stone and Alex Borstein for me, which sucks because I love her too. Like I think she's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's very funny, and the problem is that this honestly may be a matter of when it came out, but she played this movie like she was in a Mad TV sketch. Like
Yeah.
that was she was playing it as silly as that, and Again, I know a lot of it is the dialogue, and she may have been just like she was probably just going with what she read on the page.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but uh, she okay. So a thing I liked about her character is her confidence, and you got to have a confident best friend character in these type of
Right.
movies, especially if your protagonist is a art girl who doesn't know she's hot. Uh, and so I love her confidence. I love the way that the just the that she doesn't that she understands her attributes and plays off. But I agree, in especially in the beginning, like it's bad throughout, but especially that first scene in the office, like
It's rough.
it's so rough. And
Yeah.
again, I think it was probably just the script probably read like a Mad TV sketch,
Yeah.
which
And
for
and
you
again, comic
children,
book.
that was a
Yeah, I
sketch
don't
show
know.
on Fox.
Yes.
um
But like comic book movies inherently by their nature can be a little bit showy or presentational. I mean, look at the movies
mhm,
coming out at the time. J. Jonah Jameson, great example. J.K.
mhm,
Simmons really hamming up that role, but he's in a universe that feels a little bit more heightened of a reality.
mhm,
It feels like a comic book reality. Here, they've totally disregarded the comic nature of it all to where it's literally just an action movie. The girl just happens to crawl like a cat, to where we have
mhm,
no sort of comic book influence, and therefore everything that's over the top or hammy really stands out because it doesn't feel like it belongs from this pop art cover page, or it does
mhm,
not feel like it belongs in a comic book movie. When Alex Borstein, maybe in another movie, this performance works really well, or with a
mhm.
better script, who knows. um
Yeah.
while we're on this note, do you want to go to our best actors since we're on that note,
Let's hold off
or
on
wait?
best actors
Okay,
right now,
cool.
just because I want to talk about some of the another aspect of the acting, and I think this is probably just more to the directing more than the acting, and that is that it seems like no one could agree on how lean or Bealine or Bioline was supposed to be pronounced, including each actor because they even say it differently from scene to scene.
That's a
Um,
good point. That's a good point.
and I thought I last time the when I watched it last night, and so I was like, I'm going to pay attention to it. Maybe I maybe I just pronounced it in my head, and then so later it felt weird the way they were pronouncing it. No, at the beginning here's the thing: at the beginning they all pronounce it Buline. Then as it goes on in the movie, they all just start branching off and then calling it different, even if that character at some point called it Buline in the beginning of it.
I'm gonna lean Buline because Bu is in beauty, and then I think
Yeah.
like Maybelline. I'm thinking like Buline makes sense, but it just
It's
doesn't roll off
actually
the tongue
even
well.
lazier. I bet it's even lazier than that. And that is that they were like when they were just when they were pitching this to each other when they were in the writers' room, and they're like, and then they have this beauty line, and then they just took out the middle of beauty line and made it Buline.
Oh, so you think it could be Buline, or it
Well,
should be
I think it's
in
Buline. I
that?
think it's
Okay, but
I
either
think the
way, there's
pronunciation
not
is
a
correct.
consensus. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
I just
Gotcha.
think that's how it became. But
Mm.
I personally would pronounce it Buline. When I saw it, I pronounced it Buline in my head. And then they confirmed it when they said it. And then later I was like, why do they keep saying Bioline? Or Bioline or whatever. They said it so many different ways. But yeah, I think that's just down to the care that this movie was given. Uh,
Alright.
in that I don't think that the director, I don't think this was a passion project for him. I don't think the writers were trying to make I think they were a paycheck. I don't think the actors were doing anything other than okay. Just real quick, since we're talking about the acting, let's talk about the Oscar curse. In that
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because it seems Halle Berry, I mean, up until a couple years ago, was definitely suffering from the Oscar curse, which is she won for Monsters Ball, and then suddenly couldn't make a good movie to save her life.
Yeah, I mean
after that.
the X-Men movies that came out after sucked, or at least the third one.
Yeah,
And because she's a very bit part in Days of Future Past.
yeah,
And then this one, obviously, she wins Worst Actress at the Razzies, which
yeah,
we'll get to it, but like I don't
yeah,
think that's deserved. But again, the material's bad, so it's like I think any actress would have been bad in that role. But yeah, to go from an Oscar winner or to a Razzie winner in the span of 3 years, it can be demoralizing for sure.
yeah. And I think I think there's a reason for that, and that is that a lot of times these people win Oscars. And when they win the Oscar, they're suddenly popular, and when they're suddenly popular, the studios are like, "I want that person," and then they do some soulless thing for money, and then if that movie doesn't hit or doesn't get them, like it even happened with it happened with Jennifer Hudson. I think she got snatched up.
Mm,
Precious, like she got snatched up by like Money Heist or Tower Heist or whatever. Like
mm,
a bunch of people, like you get. Then they're like, "Oh, I'm going to capitalize on this," but then it doesn't end up capitalizing. You don't end up capitalizing on it because the things they pick are garbage.
yeah.
And it just it's unfortunate. But luckily, I think her career at least could be on a comeback just because she was in
Yeah.
John Wick and a lot of people dug that. Like
Yeah.
she was in the third John Wick movie.
She's in some indie stuff too. I think she directed something for the first time last year, so she's
Mm,
on a wayward path up. But I'm looking at this worst actress category, and there's some I just don't agree with. Like Mary-Kate and Ashley in New York Minute, you had to be there, and that was not a bad performance. Hilary Duff in A Cinderella Story, again, a meaningful performance to my generation. But the real winner of this category should have been Sean and Marlon Wayans, who were up for worst actress for White Chicks. I think that's a much worse performance than this. I
I
look
agree.
at the worst actor category too. I mean, you have George W. Bush winning worst actor for Fahrenheit 9/11. So that Razzie's year is just like kind of all over the place, kind of silly.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm looking at, I mean, Ben Stiller in Along Came Polly, Anchorman, and Dodgeball. Like that's what he was nominated for worst actor. Those are
he
three of
was
my favorite
good in those.
performances of his. I
Yeah,
know, and I know he wasn't good in this, but Colin Farrell and Alexander. I mean, it's not the worst thing. It's the worst thing he's done, but it's not the worst thing anyone's done. So that Razzie's year, I think they might have just been picking at straws and trying to figure out what was the worst. Because I'm looking at the other nominees for Best Picture or Worst Picture: Super Babies 2, Baby Geniuses, or whatever. Like that movie is awful. Like that should have easily beat this one. Because this one at least I find enjoyment in.
directed by direct uh, Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2, directed by Bob Clark, who directed A Christmas Story and Black Christmas.
Wow. All right. Did not know that. But yeah, I think this movie is bad, but I also think it's not the worst example, like you said, like even the Punisher example. Like it's not the worst example of this type of movie. And I do think there's so much stuff that makes me laugh and gives me the giggles, and like all the stuff I
Mm,
hate, I love. The only thing I don't like is the male gaze and just the lack of IP or the lack of
hmm
any sort of connection to any sort of universe or any time, place, setting. But all in all, like everything else is entertaining because it's bad. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I agree.
Razzies get it
Okay,
wrong sometimes.
well let's get into some things here.
Hmm.
We already talked about our worst actor,
Yeah,
Aaron
and
Stone.
I kind of
Who
alluded.
was
I
yours?
kind of alluded to
Oh
my
yeah,
best. My worst was
was
Alex
Borstein.
Borstein, but
Yeah.
I've kind of alluded to it. I think Halle Berry is the best actor in this. I really do. I
Mm,
think her material's bad, but I think what she does with it is passable enough, and I do think she at least still is trying to give a good performance with all the stuff she's given, and I think she does have the chops to be an action star. Like she looks the part, she feels the part. I like how she's trying to like buy into those like kind of sultry mannerisms, even if I think the framing and direction of it it feels a little intrusive. I think she herself is playing it well. There's a moment that I thought about for my worst line of dialogue, but the more I think about it, I kind of love it. It's the when she's at the bar and she's like, "White Russian, no ice, cold."
Punt,
Oh,
punt,
oh,
punt.
oh, sorry. But we'll talk about that because I love that moment and I love her delivery of it because it's so like I just love her delivery of it because
Oh yeah,
it's ridiculous, but she's playing it so real, and I kind of just love that moment so much. So yeah, she's like my best
I'm
actress.
sorry.
I think she's also just a great actress, so she can elevate anything. And I think if there's other actresses in here, like I think of who played Batgirl in Batman and Robin. Oh, Alicia Silverstone. Like I think she would do a far worse job with this. You know, like I think Halle Berry, just being the actor she is, did enough of a good job to make it better than it would have been in anyone else's hands.
I kind of agree. That's not who I have as best actor, but I'll just say my best actor is Benjamin Bratt, I guess. Just because I don't think anybody was particularly good. Like I think that the two leads did the best with what they had. I think that most of it is bad, really bad dialogue, really bad direction. I think that is the problem with their performances. I think with better dialogue, better performances, they would have much better job, both of them. Benjamin Bratt, I thought, just because he was the least offensive.
Do you want to get into the dialogue though, since I kind of
let's do that. I'm sorry for cutting you off on that.
No. I'm sorry for stealing your worst line of dialogue early. But tell us, why is it your worst, and tell us the full quote.
Okay. Here's the thing: there was so much to choose from, and I a lot of different lines of dialogue, but I ended up going with this one because to me it felt like everything. It felt like everything that was wrong and good in this movie.
White Russian. No ice. Hold the vodka. Hold the Kahlua.
And it's just like, okay.
Which is just cream. It's just
cream.
She's ordering cream at the bar.
Yeah.
But like, how much more satisfying is it than if she had walked up and been like, give me a cup of cream? It would be like, okay. But now like the fact that she orders that and like holds everything but the cream, I think that is such a funny line. It's such a great line. Like I personally, in a Nolan movie, if she had done a line like that, like if Anne Hathaway had delivered that line, I'd be like, that's awesome. That's a great fucking line. I love it. Because it's so freaking cheesy. I love it.
It is very cheesy. And the thing is, like, I don't think it's the worst line of dialogue. It just embodies this movie so well that I had to choose it.
It's like the so bad it's good. Like it's
exactly
idea of that. Let me tell you mine.
What's yours?
So it comes from our great Sally, aka our Alex Borstein. So it's after Tom Lone introduces himself. Detective Lone, Tom Lone. She goes, God, that's such a good name. Tom Lone. Rhymes with cone, bone, phone. Not the rhyming's all important. I must be in my cubicle alone. Like to just like meet someone, like no one ever, even the most awkward person on earth, will never meet someone and then immediately be like, Dylan, yeah, you're chilling like a villain who's killing Dylan. I'm gonna go be alone now. Like no one ever does that. No one ever just starts. Yeah. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe I would do that. Maybe that's why I relate to it so much. But it's just so fucking funny. And then it's the I must be in my cubicle alone is the best part, because then it's just like this immediate 180 of I gotta go. I love it.
Yeah,
but and kind it rhymes, of the same reason so for you. It's like so bad, but I love it.
Yeah. That is very bad. I actually, one of my favorite lines of dialogue from this movie, and I don't know that I could say it word for word, but a really great moment that felt it's when Benjamin Bratt tells Sally, I don't remember exactly what he says, but he's like, you're gonna make sure she's there, right? Like when she asked the patients out on the date, and then she tasks Sally with holding her to showing up. I thought that was so charming. Like I was like, yeah, that guy knows what's up. Like I loved that. But yes, that line that you said, that's very bad, and I really enjoy it. I don't think I appreciated it enough until you just said it, and now I'm like, man, that's so good. I wish it was mine. But yeah, it's the same. It embodies this movie so well, because it's just it's bad, but it's also really funny. Okay, so let's talk about our train wreck moment of the movie. For me, it comes down to just one scene that, I mean, it's just all a train wreck, but there's one scene that when I was watching it, I was like, the fuck is happening here? And that is the resurrection scene after she dies and the cats bring her back to life. Um,
It's so bad. I thought the
it's
Batman Returns one
so
was creepy, but this one is so bad.
it's so wild because like the cat the cat does this like crazy loud meow to get a bunch of cats to come and then get on her and then breathe in her face like
Mhm. And it's
in
the weird
Batman
CGI cats. It's not the real ones.
it in Batman Returns, it feels like natural. It feels like the things that like when they all swarm her and start like licking her and stuff, like that feels like a natural cat reaction, like a cat thing. This is so unnatural, like the the weird fog breath in her face, and then she comes to life, and her eye turns to slits and then turns back, and then she's like seeing things. It's so weird and crazy. It's just I loved it, but the whole time I'm just like, what is happening right now? It's so
Yeah.
weird that scene.
Oh, man.
Like that could have been such an interesting scene. I mean, the Batman Forever one or Batman one was interesting and creepy and really good. But they could have done something totally different and made it so interesting. But they made it so weird. I don't know. It was the weirdness is what does it for me. How weird it
Yeah.
felt.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So mine, I didn't go with the basketball scene because I feel like that's like the cliche answer, and I'm glad you didn't
Mhm.
pick it either because like that's a cliche. We don't have to spend time on it. But my
Right.
worst, it's more of a shot than it is a scene. But when Sharon Stone dies,
Mm.
the way they show her body falling to her death to me is the most Framewreck moment because
Oh
it
my
looks
god.
like someone just took like a mannequin and just threw it off because it like fumbles and flails around. It loses. It's like she loses all her bones midair, and then
Well,
it looks like she's hitting things, but she's not. She's just in midair, and then she finally splats on the ground and makes like a little shape. It is
what's
so freaking funny because like we've seen people fall to their deaths a lot, but they're done so much classier. And I guess there's no classy way to fall to your death, but like usually you don't see them for too long. But this one, like they show the full drop of her, and immediately, yeah, she falls. She starts spinning. It's like
well,
just
it's
out the get go.
there's like three distinct thing like uh positions she's in, and they're all within like they're showing the whole thing in one, but no, you can't have a scene without at least three cuts in this movie. So um at first she's like flailing because she's falling. It's like, okay, that seems natural. And then it cuts to like from flailing to just this head over heels, just like it's so abrupt the way that she changes from flailing to just like end over end. My wife was in
Yeah,
the room, like she had stopped watching it because it was making her sick to watch all the cuts, but she looked up and saw that, and we both just busted out laughing when we saw that. And then she finally evens out to like a free free what's the word, like the
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know
The
what you're
the
going with
the
this.
the base jump, like a base jump thing. Like she
Oh,
was
free fall,
but
kind of.
yeah,
Yeah,
like a free fall, like a base jump thing, until
very
she
true.
finally hits the thing. So there's like three distinct
Yeah. I really hope it's
categories
CGI.
of
I
her
really
falling.
hope they didn't just like make a dummy and throw them off the side of a building, or I hope it was like a stunt double who got paid a good amount of money to do that flip. Because I would throw up midair if I had to do the turns over there. I'm sure it was CGI, but
I hope it wasn't CGI. I hope no one chose that. Like no one made a conscious decision to make that end over end thing happen.
mm,
Um, uh, it seems like such a weird choice. I think that part seemed like it was like a dummy. The flailing seemed like it was a person, and like the base jump fall seemed like it was probably a person. So that's probably why it was there were three cuts in there, but I don't
mm.
know. It's very weird. I really hope it wasn't a person doing the end over end thing, because that seems scary. But yeah, that's a good one. That was that part made me laugh out loud. Um, well, let's move on to how this film was received real
Cool.
quick. And there's not a lot. I mean, we all know that it was.
Right.
You mentioned it got the Razzie.
Yeah.
It won Razzies. Halle Berry accepted her Razzie in person.
She did, and props for her. You know, props
Yeah.
to do that, because once you won an Oscar, it's like who cares? Go get your
Right.
Razzie. You know,
Yeah.
I'd almost want to if I was an Oscar
Yeah.
winner. I'd be like, all right, now I got to do something bad. I want that Razzie.
I just wanted to add this little snippet though to it, which was that this film was originally given an IMAX release, coinciding with the general release, as evidenced by posters with the tagline "Cat, her in IMAX." So CAT in capital, CH in lowercase, her in IMAX. So "Cat, her in IMAX." But Warner Brothers announced its cancellation on June 30th, 2004, because delays in the visual effects did not give IMAX enough time to remaster the film for its release. I can't imagine a movie that this bad having. I mean, I guess there's been plenty of bad movies in IMAX. It's just that they wanted to put this movie in more theaters than it already was in.
Absolutely crazy.
Okay, well, that brings us to the matter of the score. We score out of 5. I'll go ahead and tell you now. So this movie is bad and it is entertaining. I don't think this is it fits on. It is bad. It is entertaining, and the badness is entertaining. I don't think that it's as bad good as a lot of movies, so it's hard for me to explain, but
it's more competent in its filmmaking than the baddest movies we watched, but it's not as entertaining in its badness as the bad movies we've watched.
Yes,
but it's also not as good as the really good movies we watch. It's like, yeah, because our scale is weird. We're judging it on the so bad it's good scale, not on the how good is it actually scale.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd all be one or
so it kind of falls into Battleship territory. Although I do think it should rate higher on the scale. So I'm actually reconsidering my scoring, because I did have it at a 1, which is where I had Battleship. But I think
this
I'm going
is much better than Battleship.
I think I'm going to raise it from 1 because I noticed that it was on the same level as Battleship. I'm going to raise it to 2 pronunciations of Feline out of 5, instead of just 1 pronunciation of Feline out of 5.
And mine is going to be a quite literal fact, and that is this film is getting 3 scratches on Benjamin Bratt's face. Yeah, I'm like in the middle for this one. Like I just don't know. It's like I would go back to watch this again for its badness, but I'm not gonna say it's like The Room where I want to sell out a theater and all have us watch and laugh at it and all that. So. A big
problem with this one, and why it doesn't rank higher for me, is that it's so long. The entertainment value decreases in it,
right?
As it's 2:45. Like if it had been shorter, or not 2:45, it's not 2:45. It's 1:45. An hour and 45 minutes. If it had been closer to an hour and a half, but at some point it's just like, God, we're still watching this movie. I would love to be doing something else. So that's why it kind of ranks lower for me. But you're right, it is not as bad, or really, it's not as mundane as Battleship. So it does raise up its score for me.
Yeah, so that brings us to Mount Trashmore, and for those listening for the first time, Mount Trashmore is basically our Mount Rushmore of so bad it's good movies. We have 4 pretty iconic ones on there right now. We have The Room, Birdemic, Plan 9 from Outer Space, and Troll 2. I don't think this is going on there. It's not quite at that level, but I do think it's one of the better, just plain old bad movies we watch, but I still don't think it's the so bad it's good in the sense that like we need to put it in our canon. So that's Catwoman.
Let's talk about next time.
So next month, I am going to be doing a big old subathon on the channel, which is basically a 24-hour marathon where I'm going to be streaming every single show. Picture this: Draft Day, Framewreck, Recipe for Reality, Marvelous Movie Mondays, do some trivia matches. You'll be able to unlock certain things with the amount of subscriptions we get. We'll also have a donation link to enter you into a giveaway for Blu-rays. It's going to be a lot of fun. But 24 hours is a lot of time. So we figured, why don't we make a little bit of a longer episode? This is about an hour, maybe like a 2 hour or 2.5 hour. And let's explore more than one film. and not just 2, not just 3, not just 4. Let's do 5, Matt. You want to do 5 films next month?
Yeah, I want to do 5 films, and
Okay,
it's
which
gonna be
5
5
films would you
films.
like to do?
Yeah, it's gonna be 5 films in a particular series. And here's the thing:
Mm.
is that sometimes we do a movie that I've never seen. Sometimes we do a movie that Dill's never seen. This time we're doing a movie that I've never seen. Dill, have you seen these movies?
I've seen these movies probably more times than I've seen most movies. Actually, that's not true. But I've seen all these movies. I've seen one of them in theaters, and it's probably my most memorable theater experience of all time. But I've watched all these movies at least 2 or 3 times.
Okay,
I know I
so
sound like a bigger fan than I actually am, but I've seen these movies.
okay, so we're doing movies that I have never seen. And so I don't know if they're so bad they're good. That's what we're going to figure out in
Yeah.
February on the subathon.
Yeah.
We are going to be watching all 5 Twilight movies.
There it
Uh,
is.
Now
Yes.
I know some of you are out there. Some of you are out there going, Twilight. Those are great movies. They're my very, very favorites. And some of you are going, wow, those are bad but not good. And I'm going to find out. That's the whole
Right.
experiment we're doing here. Is I'm about to
It,
find out what.
in the show, we're not always gonna have so bad we're good movies. Like Battleship, it was just a bad movie. We just didn't like it. We didn't care for it. It was boring. But then we have movies like The Room or Birdemic, like the ones on Mount Trashmore that are so bad they're good. And then we have good movies like Nightmare on Elm Street 2, where we're like, no, that was just good. So it really varies. And this is gonna be interesting because I have a fondness for them, but I have a nostalgia for them. I haven't watched them in at least 5 years. So I am excited to watch these with a more modern, fresh lens and just looking at them as a whole, because I don't think I've ever watched them all together. I remember watching them shortly after they were available on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, or streaming. And I saw the penultimate one in theaters, because that was the one where it was like, you have to see it in theaters because of the seizures everyone's been getting watching that movie. It's the scariest movie since The Exorcist. And I was like, all right, cool, because there's a scene in it that was giving people seizures. And we'll talk about it next month. Yes,
Oh,
Matt,
God,
this is all
yeah,
new stuff,
I'm
Matt.
excited to talk about
But I
this.
went with my friends to see a bunch of dudes. We all went to the movies to see that movie just for that scene. But so I have a fondness for this franchise. It's a franchise that I've watched when I've been in relationships. It's one that I've watched with certain friends and introduced to, and it's movies that I was personally introduced to by my mom because she read the books. So like I have a lot of fondness for this franchise. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, we'll find out. But we are going to be covering all 5 Twilights on the subathon, on the 24-hour marathon on February 18th and 19th. And then the videos will be released separately the next few weeks after that, just so you can watch it on its own. But we encourage you to stick along and watch it on this subathon with us. It'll probably be one of the later slots because that's a night owl like me.
If you love the Twilight movies, come watch along and comment with us. We're going to shout out people's comments throughout the episode.
Yeah. We'll be watching
come-
live, and that's going to be a first as well. So please be
Yeah.
respectful also when you come to comment. Like, if you're just going to come to trash on us or trash on the movies and not offer any real insight, like, we'd prefer you to come with actual insight and like ready to have a good time talking about them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, like if you wanna come in and tell us how much you love these movies and how wrong I am, assuming I'm wrong, come in and tell us. If you want to come in and give these movies a good talking to, like you hate the movies, you wanna put them in their place with me, come do it. But yes, do it respectfully. Have a nuanced take, please.
Yes.
But come join us. Have a good time.
We can't wait for you to take the bite with us. Vampires, baby. And because it's Valentine's Day, we're celebrating Valentine's Day. It'll be a few days after Valentine's Day, but like that's the theme. It's all love, and no better love story than that, right? The greatest love story ever told, Twilight. So we'll be back next month with that. Any last words, Matt? Where can they find you?
You can find me anywhere on the internet at MattmanXIII, or most places on the internet, Letterboxd, Twitter. You'll be able to find me on probably 4 or 5 shows on the subathon next month. Honestly, I'm going to try to get on all of them that he'll let me on.
Yes. There's some that you will have to sit out, but yeah, we'll try our best. You're definitely gonna be part of Draft Day and Framewreck, and maybe if we hit a certain subscriber amount, we may unlock a Harry Potter match, which Matt would be a part of as well. So A lot of fun stuff coming to the channel soon. Coming to that. If you're listening for the first time ever on the Dyl Pickle podcast, thank you. This is the first episode that will be available on audio, so that's really awesome. We have now extended it to make all these shows available on audio. But if you want to see our beautiful faces, go check us out on YouTube. Give us a subscription, a like, a comment. Again, keep it respectful. But if you're a Catwoman stan, let us know. Rank your Catwomen. Who are your favorites? Let's do that as a parting ways, Matt. Who are your give us your top 3 Catwomen?
Well, I'm a big fan of both Eartha Kitt and Julie Newmar from the 1960s Adam West Batman. But if we're strictly talking live action, then I am also a big fan of gosh, you said top 3, and now I'm like Michelle Pfeiffer and Zoe Kravitz and Anne Hathaway. I just love them, But I'm big because they were my first Catwomen. Eartha Kitt and Julie Newmar from the 60s are probably where I would go.
Cool. Yeah, I don't really have a ranking, but like my favorites, Anne Hathaway, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Zoe Kravitz are all like up there for me. Yeah, just a fun parting ways. You can find me at Dylan_Randazzo at Twitter and or Letterboxd. Again, Dyl Pickle Movie Network, go subscribe. Dyl Pickle Podcast, go subscribe. If you're listening, watching, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
What a story, Mark.